Thank you very much. Welcome, to our special International Executive Roundtable. It is an honor for us to be joined by Professor Antonella Zuccella from the University of Pavia. My name is Manuel Serapio, and I serve as faculty director of the Institute for International Business, and I also teach our course on international entrepreneurship. Professor Zuccella is professor of marketing and circular entrepreneurship at the University of Pavia. She has very, very impressive credentials. She has served as a visiting professor at Strasbourg University for several years, visiting researcher at the Harvard Business School, and visiting research fellow at Anglia Ruskin University in Cambridge. She is a member of the Italian Academy of Business Studies, Italian Society of Management, the Academy of International Business, and of the European International Business Academy. Her research interests are in the field of international entrepreneurship and sustainable entrepreneurship. Professor Zuccella has served as a keynote speaker in many international conferences. She has published articles in the top journals in the field of entrepreneurship, international business, international entrepreneurship, and marketing. Together with our colleagues, Professor Birgit Hagen, myself, Professor Antonella has published International Entrepreneurship in a book now in its second edition as the lead author of the text. She was awarded by the International Business Review for her best article in 2018. She received the Emerald Literati Award for Most Outstanding Paper in Multinational Business Review in 2017, and twice awarded for the best paper in the International Business Conference of AIB. She is scientific advisor for public and private organizations about entrepreneurship and international business. Now, aside from these very impressive credentials, I'm very honored to have had the opportunity to work with Professor Zuccella on various initiatives, including the faculty development in International Entrepreneurship Program and the AIB Doctoral Academy. Antonella, I know on behalf of my students and the International Institute for International Business and our cyber here in our business school and the Jake Job Center for Entrepreneurship, welcome. We're looking forward to your talk.
Thank you, Manuel, for this presentation, and thanks everybody for joining this lecture, this seminar. As you can see here, as Manuel has said, I am Antonella Zuccella. I'm professor at the University of Pavia in Italy. Pavia is a medieval university town very close to Milan. And what about today's seminar? I divided it in two parts. The first part is about the field of international entrepreneurship and analyzed as a journey from a phenomenon to a new field of inquiry. And then in the second part, we will dig a little bit more into international entrepreneurial organizations. What are they? How many types can we list of international entrepreneurial organizations? And what do they have in common? Between these two parts, I'm very happy to receive comments, have questions, try to answer, but you can stop me in any moment. The main reference of today's seminar is a book you already know, I imagine, because also Manuel just cited it. I think it's supporting your course in Denver. It's a book at its second edition. So from this point of view, it has been a successful international enterprise, a case of international entrepreneurship, joining together people from different countries, backgrounds, me from Italy, Birgit from Austria, Manuel from the US, with diverse experiences and points of view. And we wrote what at the moment I think is still the only book that in a comprehensive way deals with this phenomenon of international entrepreneurship. So let's start from this field. I'm aware that you had already a number of excellent lectures on the topic, so there may be an overlap with things you already know. In case you can stop me, of course. I would like to start from the origins, and soon I think we'll explain better why it's important to look at the origins. And the origins are synthesized in this case history, Logitech. It's not my choice, Logitech, but it has been the object of study of the very first studies in international entrepreneurship. And here I just quote this article, 1994, describing this company. Logitech is a vivid example of an INV, international new venture. What does it mean being an international new venture? Well, the founders were from two different countries. They had a global vision for the company since the very beginning. The venture, at the beginning, they only produced peripheral devices for personal computers. Now they still exist and they have a more diversified business. They established from the very beginning headquarters in Switzerland and then in the US. Manufacturing R&D were split between US and Switzerland. They quickly spread to Taiwan and Ireland, and their first important commercial contract was with a Japanese company. So this is a clear example of what an international new venture is. Being not just international, I would say global from the beginning. Growing fast in very different markets. So, as you can see from this second picture, Logitech still exists. It's still a company with a number of subsidiaries all over the world. The headquarters is in Switzerland. And they have diversified their production, but they continue to operate in the high-tech digital technologies business. But what is new here? So why, observing a company, some people decided that there was something new. There was a new kid in town. Well, in those days, we are talking of end of the 80s when they started observing these cases. At the end of the 80s, so number of years ago, 35, 36 years ago, the international business literature, as you may already know, described internationalization as a slow process and a gradual process. That is, a company starts from the domestic market or from the local market. And then they gradually expand domestically because they have to acquire knowledge, expertise. They have to train their muscles. And only when they are ready, years later, they start approaching international markets, but again, in a very gradual way. So they start from the closest markets, the markets that are more similar to the domestic market in terms of language, culture, regulations, market structures, etc. And then they gradually move to more distant situations. That was the theory until the end of the 80s. And not because the theory was wrong, but again, that theory was based on observing what companies typically did. But in the 80s, something new happened. The context changed. The context became increasingly globalized. Countries became more and more interconnected. Transportation costs dropped. Information communication costs dropped. So it was the start of globalization as we know it. And consequently, also companies started riding this wave and becoming international earlier and quicker in their life. So what is so interesting in looking at the beginning, at a story which started 36 years ago, because the lesson we learn is to be always very curious, to look outside at reality, look at what companies do. And is there something, a new phenomenon that does not match with existing models, with existing ideas, with existing paradigms? And if so, is it just an exception to the rule? Is it just an outlier? Or there is really something there happening, a new trend, a new phenomenon that is taking place increasingly. So, international entrepreneurship last year in 2024 celebrated 35 years, as I said, from the Logitech example, 30 years or 20 years, depending on which milestone you want to consider. Now we are in 2025, so it's 36 years since its very seminal work, this article on Journal of Business Venturing, International versus Domestic Entrepreneurship, written by Patricia McDougall. And we are highly indebted to her for doing exactly the job we have done in the last 5 minutes. Look outside, start questioning what's happening, why it doesn't match existing models, theories, and beliefs. And it's 31 years now since a decade awarded contribution from, and here you can see it, hopefully, it's not, toward the theory of international new venture. The same author, Patricia McDougall, with Benjamin Oviatt. And in this article, which received a Decade Award article for its importance, relevance for changing the view of internationalization, they move from observation of reality of companies to theorizing, which is the typical process we do in academia. And it's 21 years since the seminal work on born global firms. I know that Manuel has already dealt with the concept of born global firms, but before I introduce the idea of international new ventures, born global firms is quite similar concept with a few distinctions. I don't want to enter too much in this type of academic definitions. Let me focus on what these companies have in common. International new ventures, born global firms, are firms that internationalize very early in their lives and fast. What is really interesting, and again confirms how much it's important to link academia with practice, is that in the same time, in the same period, in 1993, McKinsey Australia branch came out with a little article, you know, they have their journal, McKinsey Quarterly, about born global firms in Australia. So this demonstrates how practice and academia really go hand in hand, and if they do a good job, and they can really spot a new phenomenon at its start. What happened in the following years, so we come to the present days, I mean, a number of years have passed. However, consider that international entrepreneurship is still a very young discipline. it's one of the youngest. I mean, entrepreneurship dates back the 18th century. So we are talking of a couple of centuries or more of story. International entrepreneurship, so it's relatively young and growing. Well, in all these years until now, from the beginning, international entrepreneurship started studying, analyzing the dimensions of this new phenomenon, wondering about what is it, how can we define it, who are the protagonists, the players in international entrepreneurship, why is it happening now, how is it happening, where, in terms of geography, and when, the temporality of the phenomenon. So in our book with Birgit and Manuel, we have this table which starts from, in the very first chapter, to consider these first three dimensions: what, who, and why. What? We take the definition, the most recent definition. It's again a definition from Tricia McDougall and Ben Oviatt, but we are in 2005, a few years later after their first works. And as you can see, something has happened here. The definition of international entrepreneurship is broad. It says it's the discovery, enactment, evaluation, exploitation of opportunities across national borders to create future goods and services. So in this definition, we don't say it's about international new ventures. It's about born global firms. We are broadening the field because they understood, always observing reality, looking at companies, that the characteristics, the foundational characteristics of international entrepreneurship could go beyond these first cases they analyze. And the distinctive element is about exploring and exploiting opportunities across national borders to create future goods and services. And what about the who? The who is primarily entrepreneurs. We saw it in the example of Logitech. The first analysis of the case was about who are the founders? What is their background? Where are they from? How did they develop a global mentality? So the company took off internationally at the very beginning. So this is a very important level of analysis for us. International entrepreneurship is very much about entrepreneurs, about people, about founders, about individuals, about teams. But of course, also about the organizations they set up, which can be of different types, I will see later at the end. And about networks also. How do entrepreneurs establish networks? They have their own social networks. They are very important. And their organizations establish inter-business networks, quite often based on the social networks of the founders. And what about the why? We said before, international entrepreneurship seems to go hand in hand with globalization. The cases reported have grown together with increasing globalization in markets, interconnectedness, ICT, internet, decrease in transportation costs, decrease in trade barriers. I leave you with this thought because the world is changing. The world is changing, so the why that has worked from the 80s until the very recent years has changed its terms. we don't have the same international context. We live in a world in which trade barriers are rising again. The cost of doing business international is rising. There are conflicts throughout the world, which makes more risky, more expensive to trade. Think of the Red Sea crossing, etc., etc. So I leave you this element, this food for thought. What will happen to international entrepreneurship in the next 3 decades? Then, of course, we have more dimensions. There is the when dimension. We started from the when, because when I mentioned the Logitech case study, one of the very first sentences was about the fact that they went international very early and fast. So precocity and speed are fundamental elements, at least of international new ventures and born global firms. But more generally, if you think at the definition, the more recent definition of international entrepreneurship, which is broader, which goes beyond international new ventures and born global firms, you may not have the precocity element, but you certainly keep the speed element in international growth, because this is the effect of acting entrepreneurially. You either fail or scale. This is basically the classic rule of entrepreneurship. Then we have the where question. What does it mean, where? It's about geography, it's about distance, and this is fundamental in international business. When we use the term international, it means that we are looking at a wider scope than the domestic market. And from this point of view, international entrepreneurship can be divided in 2 main streams. One is about the where to, that is, which countries are chosen, selected by these international entrepreneurial organizations. Where do they go? Why Logitech established premises both in Switzerland and US at the same time? Why the first important commercial contract was with Japan? So this is the theme of entrepreneurial internationalization. This is how we call it nowadays. While the second stream is about comparisons. The second stream is very different, because here the objective is not to study how companies choose, grow in foreign markets. Here the objective is to compare levels of entrepreneurship across countries. So, and this is the field, as you can see there, of comparative international entrepreneurship. So the question here is completely different. In the first case, entrepreneurial internationalization, the question is, which countries do companies choose? How distant are they? How do they cope with distance, with diversity in cultures, regulations, market structures, etc.? In the second case, comparative international entrepreneurship, the question is, which are the most entrepreneurial countries in the world? And the list. What are entrepreneurship levels in the different countries? Which is the rate of startups, the rate of scale-ups compared to the rest of the population of enterprises? What are the characteristics of entrepreneurs in terms of education, gender, whatever. So this is a very different type of stream, but very relevant too, because these comparisons are very important, for example, for policy making. But they are also important for companies because you can understand in which countries it may be easier to do business compared to others. So these are, again, the two main streams I mentioned. So, but I don't want to speak about comparative entrepreneurship because, as I try to explain, it's a very distinctive, peculiar kind of field. I want to stay on the topic we started from, that is entrepreneurial internationalization. And the typologies of international entrepreneurial organizations. So I think my first part ends here. Let me check the timing. Okay, I should be on time.
It's perfect, Antonella. So thank you. Thank you very much, for again, setting the field and helping us gain a better understanding of the field. We'll probably have about 10 minutes for questions. So, let me start with a question. Again, like you, I would like to recognize Professor Patricia McDougall-Coven for her seminal work and a lot of things that she did, to grow the field. I may have shared this with you in 2005. I think what happened was I gave her a call and I said, our field is growing. I want to do more for this. I want to develop a faculty development program on international entrepreneurship. And, I would like to invite you to, join us in this initiative and, be our lead scholar, our lead speaker, talking about the field and looking at the research, in the field. And I was not sure whether she was going to respond at all to this, but in less than an hour, she came back and she said, I'm on board. And that was the start of our partnership. We did a faculty development program across multiple countries. And, at the end, we've trained over 500 faculty members in the teaching, researching, and outreach initiatives related to international entrepreneurship. Of course, after Patricia, retired, she was kind enough to introduce me to Professor Nicole Coviello, another top scholar in the field, who then took her place. And then, as I have shared earlier, you were kind enough, to take that lead, working with us on our faculty development program. And so it's just been, again, a great initiative and be very, very grateful to Professor McDougall-Coven and Nicole Coviello and yourself, Antonella, for, joining us in this journey. My question is, why do you think the field, has grown so much and has attracted attention? When we launched this, we got interest from international business folks and entrepreneurship folks. And then the marketing folks joined, the strategy folks joined, the management folks joined, the legal folks joined. And most recently, we are getting the information systems and data analytics folks, technology folks joining us. What's your take on this? Why the interest?
Yeah, well, as I said before, international entrepreneurship started blooming in a very favorable context, an economic context, economies growing, and growing interconnected increasingly. Interconnectedness meant the progresses in ICT. Now we are all very familiar with the internet and its potentialities also for business. But 30 years ago, the situation was still at the very beginning, let's say. And that was a powerful element but also the reduction, as I said, in transportation costs. People transportation, but goods transportations as well. The regulation in many markets, an increasing environment in favor of liberalizing trade worldwide, the World Trade Organization and the multilateral trade agreement instead of bilateral agreements. All these prepared a very fertile ground for international growth. And at the same time, of course, attracted entrepreneurs, but also competencies that you were mentioning from marketing, from technology, from etc. Finance, of course. And the more companies realize the potential of international markets, the more internationalization was not only a matter of exporting. Companies became more confident in setting subsidiaries abroad. Then they started increasingly having manufacturing abroad, manufacturing subsidiaries, but also outsourcing and offshoring manufacturing. And the more they did so, the more they reaped the economic benefits from these, reducing the cost of goods, etc. So it was a context extremely favorable. And we have seen the number of these organizations growing increasingly. We should not underestimate the human factor, that is a new breed of entrepreneurs, educated, speaking more than one language. They have been traveling abroad. Maybe they were educated abroad, partially or totally. So this mentality, this global mentality, international mentality, had, I think, an important role. So if you put together all these pieces, you can explain a growing number of international entrepreneurial activities and organizations. As I said, we don't know about the future. The context is changing now, but it's very, very interesting to observe what happens.
Thank you, Antonella. And I know that we'll have a conversation on this later when I invite you to talk about the future of international entrepreneurship, another lecture that you will be doing for us. So thank you. Also, I wanted to recognize Walter Kummerly. At that time, he was at Harvard, who also played a role in the expansion of our international entrepreneurship programs. We have time for one or two questions.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So you briefly spoke about the international entrepreneurship and its tie to globalization. Can you expand on that a little bit and how you see the future of entrepreneurs going international and then tying that to globalization?
Thank you for your question. It's correct to set a distinction between internationalization and globalization. Because certainly internationalization refers to entering in multiple foreign countries where differences matter. The cost of doing business abroad can be relevant more or less depending on the countries. Globalization is a term that gained momentum from the 80s, as I said, and refers to the fact that I can operate simultaneously in very different, geographically different markets. in more, let's say, interconnected ways. I remember a famous article by Levitt. It made the history of marketing, of international marketing, because in that article he said the world will become a global village. So the products will be all the same all over the world. And the companies have to become global companies to achieve these big economies of scale of selling the same products in every country, because consumers want the same things increasingly in the world. Well, the prophecy of Levitt actually didn't happen as expected, but many things have gone in that direction. Not completely, but certainly there are goods, there are services that now can be sold internationally in a quite standardized way, and for companies this is a big benefit. It's economies of scale, of course. If you think of the iPhone, it's clearly a global product. You may translate, of course, adapt it to languages and all these kind of things, but most of the product is globalized. And this has been an element that powered fast internationalization. But of course, globalization then realizes its limits. Not every product has the potential to become really global. National differences still matter a lot. So nowadays we have a coexistence of these two different approaches. The more international approach, looking at countries as different, in some cases, a global approach.
Thank you, Antonella. And Michael, as I said, we are going to, address your question related to the future in a third lecture that Antonella, will share with us. And this is also based on, her one of her recent articles in International Business Review, looking at the future of international entrepreneurship. So, Annie, I will call on you, after the second segment. I want to give time to Professor Zuccella to go through the second part of her presentation. Antonella,
Yes.
I'll turn it over to you. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So my last part is about types of international entrepreneurial organizations. In order to arrive at this topic, we go back again to our dimensions of the phenomenon: why, what, who, when, where. And now we focus on the last one: how. How dimension means how does the process of international opportunity exploration and exploitation take place along time and across space. So here you can see a tentative figure in which we have these two dimensions, space and time. I hope that Albert Einstein will forgive me for this, because you know that the theory of relativity is based on the assumption that space and time are a unique dimension. So, but sorry to Einstein, I put them in separate variables. So space is geography, is countries, time, of course, time. How this process of exploring, exploiting opportunity unfolds along these dimensions. In the background, we always have our what, who, and why commented before. In trying to understand this how, let me use examples. Manuel knows that I love examples. I love cases. So And I start with this example, Aquatic Show. This is a French company. It's based in Strasbourg. So I had the opportunity to know well the company when I was visiting a professor there. Aquatic Show is a company created in 1980 by a small group of engineers. They were sound engineers, water engineers, music engineers, etc. And they wanted to create something new, a beautiful show, a show combining lights, music, and water, fountains, water games, etc. You can see them on YouTube. There are a few videos. They're quite impressive. They also did the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games in Beijing. So very successful company with big customers, amazing shows. But when they started, they were rather local. They started from the region in which they were based. Then they expanded in France at the domestic level. And then they started moving in nearby countries and then expanding. So it seems a classic slow process of internationalization, but it's not like that. Because when they realized the international potential of their business after 3, 4, 5 years from foundation, they became international very, very quickly. In a few years, their export to sale, foreign sales to sale ratio reached 90%. So they didn't have the precocity, it's not a born global, but they had the speed. In the moment they realized this potential, they immediately scale very, very quickly. Another example is Hallmark. Hallmark is a British company. A very interesting case, again, they do scan for animals, scan machines for horses originally, and more recently for cats, dogs. Founded in 2001, founded by scientists, a bit like the previous one. The founders in the previous were engineers. Here it's a group of scientists specialized in magnetic resonance imaging. And they started designing the very first, not existing before, scan for horses, standing horses. Before this, what was the innovation here? The innovation is that if you need to scan a horse, you have to sedate the animal deeply. And this may damage the horse in a way or shock the horse. We are talking of animals with a worth of a very high economic worth sometimes. And besides the economic worth, think of our pets. They have an affective worth. So they realized the first and patented the first scan for horse standing without sedation. And now they do it also for small animals. The scanners are not sold. They are rented with a fully inclusive maintenance contract. Hallmark has more than 100 MRI installations in 23 countries worldwide. So this company expanded again very quickly international with their own distinctive model, that is setting subsidiaries in all these 23 countries very quickly. And they say we saw an opportunities where others were seeing problems. So what do they have in common, these two examples? Add also Logitech. So we have so far these 3 examples. Logitech, an international new venture. The Aquatic Show, very fast internationalizer, but not from the very beginning. And then we have this hallmark, who is expanding with a specific model of business across different countries. Well, they all fit very well with the definition McDougall-Ovia 2005 that we have seen before. They are all characterized by discovering or enacting, evaluating, exploiting opportunities across countries to create future goods and services. So the additional element is also this innovativeness. They are not only proactive, that is being among the first in their business, in thinking, conceiving a business. They are not only ready to face risks, they are also innovative. They create new goods and new services. So these are the components of entrepreneurial internationalization: exploration and exploitation of international opportunities. And this is done with this entrepreneurial orientation, characterized by innovativeness, risk-taking, proactivity. So this is the little recipe of entrepreneurial internationalization. And here we come to our list of typologies of international entrepreneurial organizations. As I promised at the very beginning of this lecture, this field has grown in terms of diversity of organizations. At the beginning, it was all about born global firms and international new ventures, the first observed. But very soon, we realized that other companies had an internationally entrepreneurial behavior, as I have just described: innovative, risk-taking, proactive across international markets. For example, you can have established for-profit firms embracing, at some stage in their life, entrepreneurial internationalization. This may happen for a change in management, a change in governance. It may happen for realizing the potential of your business, etc. You have multinationals. You can have multinational subsidiaries acting entrepreneurial. We have transnational enterprises. Now I will come to these definitions with example. We can have hybrid companies, that is for-profit and not for-profit, like benefit companies. We can have social enterprises. Manuel has a lot of fantastic examples about it. We can have even NGOs acting entrepreneurially in an international scale. So Logitech was an example of the first breed of companies observed, international new ventures. But Aquatic Show is an example of an established firm that after some years realizes the potential of its business abroad and grows very fast internationally. Hallmark is an example of a micro multinational, a small multinational with establishing premises, subsidiaries in 23 countries in a very few years. And they do so because they don't sell their products. They rent them. So they have to provide continual technical assistance and proximity to customers. But we have transnational companies. What are these transnational companies? They are, according to a definition, you may find other definitions of transnational companies, but transnational entrepreneurship is about companies created by migrants that operate internationally, sometimes leveraging on the social network of migrants in their original countries, etc. You have here an example of this company. It's based in the United Kingdom. It was established a few years ago by a woman, a Syrian refugee. She had to escape from war with her husband, their kids, highly educated woman with a PhD in chemistry. She lost everything. She lost her job. She lost her house. And she started again in the United Kingdom producing cheese, a typical Middle Eastern cheese, halloumi. And she became very successful. And she's now exporting this cheese all over the world. So this is a case of transnational entrepreneurship. But what about multinational subsidiaries? Well, here we have an example I like particularly. It's about Kellogg's. And we are talking of Kellogg's India, the Indian subsidiary. What happened to Kellogg's? Some 20 years ago, if I'm right, or so, they opened a Kellogg's subsidiary in India. The idea was to conquer the Indian market, and they said, we are going to change the Indian breakfast. And so they brought their Kellogg's cornflakes, their blockbusters. It was a big failure. It didn't work. So India changed Kellogg's. It happened the other way around. They had to change radically their own offer, their products, to appeal the Indian taste. And so the Kellogg subsidiary in India had a mandate from the headquarters to be entrepreneurial, so to create new goods, new products fitting the tastes of the Indian customers. This is an example. Their most successful product is this upma, which has nothing to do with the typical Kellogg's products that we see in our countries. Finally, last example, because I cannot make examples of all these hybrid or non-profit cases. I chose the example of Ojair, but we can see it better in the last slide. Ojair is a case I know very well because it's an Italian, it's not it's a benefit company, so between for-profit and non-profit. Ojair is a company that has the purpose to clean the oceans from plastic. But what is really innovative and fantastic, in my opinion, is that in order to clean the oceans from plastic or contribute to, they made alliances with fishermen and fishing companies, fishermen cooperatives all over the world. In that map, you can see in red, blue dots all the places in which they have these alliances, cooperation agreement with fishing companies and fishermen. And when the fishermen go fishing, let's say, as you know, they collect, hopefully fish, but they collect a lot of plastic. And what they do normally, they throw plastic back in the ocean. Ojair said, no, please, we pay you money, but bring the plastic back to the harbor. And we have people collecting the plastic, bringing them to recycling companies. And the recycling company recycles the plastic from the ocean and converts the plastic into swimwear and surfboards, etc., etc. And they are sold online on a platform. So in this case, the company has created an entire global ecosystem involving fishermen and fishing companies, involving recycling companies, involving also volunteer organizations and associations. And it's a real global project. It's actually very successful. They are born just 4 years ago, and they have gone already very far. So this was my last example to try to explain how international entrepreneurship has gone far. but always coherent with that recipe I try to explain, exploring, exploiting global opportunities, international opportunities, in a way that is innovative, proactive, risk-taking. That's all. Thank you. Time for questions. Let me check if I'm doing well.
Yes, perfect, Antonella. This is great. These are great examples. And yeah, we've actually worked, with some companies that could benefit from the work of, your last example of Grai. Great. I know Professor Liu is here. She's very interested in circularity too, a research topic that the three of us are interested in. So, Suhani, I promise to give you the floor for the first question.
Thank you, Professor, for the session. Professor, you mentioned the balance between speed, which is precocity, and sustainability of growth. Now, for example, born global firms often scale very quickly in a span of 3 to 4 years. So, how can they avoid this risk of overstretching while still leveraging the international opportunities and still keeping up with the scale, the rapid growth?
So you mean how they balance, let's say, scaling and sustainable growth in a
Sustainability,
way?
yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a very good question because it touches the heart of entrepreneurship in general. It's valid for international entrepreneurship. It's valid also for international entrepreneurship. The problem of being entrepreneurial is that you tend to grow fast because you are proactive, you like risk, you take risk, you are innovative, so there is potential to sell more and more of your innovation. But to fuel all this potential, you may run the risk of not having a sustainable growth. The risk of failure is significant. I must be, but here Manuel and Jintin have been working a lot on the topic. I can only tell you one thing, which is our personal experience of the book. In the first edition of our book in International Entrepreneurship, we had a number of examples of born global firms, fast-growing firms. When we decided to write the second edition of the book, we looked back at the examples, and more than half of them had failed. So had disappeared. But that's entrepreneurship. That's entrepreneurship. We are aware that in entrepreneurship there is what they call the debt valley. Particularly in the first years, if growth is unbalanced, companies run the risk of failure. Here, of course, there is a problem of how growth is financed, and that's a very important thing. One of our original companies failed because they went too much in debt beyond their capacity to serve the debt. In other cases, the reasons may be lack of skills also, because you start enthusiastically, you see the potential, but maybe you're not skilled or experienced enough. So there are many reasons. Maybe you were wrong about understanding the potential of your work. So the reasons are many, but you are definitively right. We always have to warn entrepreneurs about this risk, about making their growth sustainable, because the risk is always there.
Thank you, Antonella and Suhani. Thanks for the question. Let me just again, add to what Professor Zuccella already mentioned, and that is the importance of focus. You really don't want to lose focus because it affects both of these issues that you have mentioned. And in class, we talk about the experience of golf tech, right? It could easily lose focus now because of all of the opportunities that's coming their way. Everyone is giving them a call, knocking on their door. What about this? What about that? Right? They could expand very, very rapidly, but it might not be sustainable for the enterprise, for
Mm.
them to lose focus. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Other questions from the class? Anyone? David, I don't want to put you on the spot, but any question from you?
No, I appreciate it. I actually had a question earlier in regard to kind of what's next, but you keep on alluding to another time where we'll be discussing some of the future of international entrepreneurship. So perhaps I'll save my question until that time.
Antonella, maybe we can preview this because it has come up
Yeah.
twice. And, that was also going to be, my question, with these tariffs. I just saw an article today that many of these disruptions favor the larger companies.
Yeah.
And so will that create, a lot of headwinds for the entrepreneurial firm? So, yeah, I'm okay if, we talk about, the future. Okay. So go ahead, Antonella.
Yeah, it's a super intriguing question for which there is no clear answer because we are just in the middle of the storm or at the beginning of the storm, I'm afraid. So very difficult to foresee the future. Certainly, we know the context is not gonna change. It will be characterized by a wave of disruptions characterizing international business, international operations. Of course, the big issue at the moment seems to be trade barriers and particularly tariffs. Because there are many types of trade barriers. We focus on tariffs, but maybe non-tariff barriers may be even more dangerous. But in this moment, much of the debate is around tariffs. And this is worrying a lot entrepreneurs. I speak to Italian entrepreneurs almost daily. And there is a lot of concern. What are they doing? Of course, some wait and see with the attitude the storm will pass, very Italian attitude. Many of them are diversifying markets. That is, if they are particularly exposed to export, in countries like the United States, sorry to say, they are desperately looking for other markets. So diversification. Other companies feeling financially strong consider the possibility to open a subsidiary in the United States. So to avoid, to produce, to manufacture there, to avoid tariffs. So it depends. It depends a lot on the type of reactions, depends a lot on the entrepreneur mindset, on the type of product and sector, on the resources they have available. Having said this, going back to international entrepreneurship, I must say that while some people think, is this the end of international entrepreneurship? Because it has grown on the globalization wave. So is it going to become less and less? My answer, my personal answer, and I'm very convinced about what I'm saying, is that these are the contexts in which you really see entrepreneurship. We may have a little bit less of it, but what is there will be really entrepreneurial, because you have to find solutions to big problems, innovative solution, risk-taking, proactive. You need much more of that in a context like this. So, I mean, surfing this new context may provide us a new breed of cases, examples that are more powerfully entrepreneurial, because they have to if they want to operate internationally.
Thank you, Antonella, and I can't wait for your next article that actually addresses
Yes.
this question. But I do agree with you that this is the time, because what's going on in many cases is that in many countries, again, the policy that we come up with sometimes will address a fundamental issue, but will also have a number of unintended consequences. And so, there are articles, for example, that I have read that it is possible that the cure is worse than the disease. We know what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow the domestic economy. We're trying to, again, create domestic capacity and so on and so forth. This is happening in many countries. But, what are the unintended consequences, for example? And
Yeah.
so this becomes an issue. Karen.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for being with us
Hello.
today. I have a question that may be a little obvious, but it's just interesting to reflect on. So what are the skills that you think would be good to develop for us if we want to be international entrepreneurs, or if we're going to be helping a branch in an organization to internationalize?
Oh, thank you. This is another very good question, because our duty is to educate people for international entrepreneurship. So I think that of course you need all the things that were needed also before. That is, you need to know markets, you need to know regulations, you need to know about marketing, but technology, of course, digital technologies, how they can help, how artificial intelligence can help. All these things are very important. Nowadays, you can tell me we don't need to know foreign languages because we have artificial intelligence. So everything will be translated. If we are in a business negotiation, artificial intelligence translates. If we have to prepare a contract, artificial intelligence translates. So just to make an example, we need to know the potentialities of these technologies. But at the same time, I think we need nowadays more cultural intelligence. So, for example, in my university, in our master program in international business, we have a course in cultural intelligence that prepares people to understand diversity, to understand local cultures, to prepare for dealing with it. Because these are the soft skills in which artificial intelligence cannot be of great help or no help at all. And if the world is becoming less global, if countries become increasingly, let's say, attached to their culture, traditions, etc., and then you have to increase your rate of cultural intelligence. This is what I think, but many companies say it. A company reported to me recently that they went to a trade negotiation, and normally they speak English because that used to be the global language. And the other company, I will not tell you which country it was, the other company said, no, we don't want to speak English. We speak our own language. You bring an interpreter. So, I mean, these are signals that, of course, there's something out there we have to be prepared for. And I think cultural intelligence may be a good investment.
Thank you.
I agree. And I was just last week I was in Provo, Utah, in Salt Lake,
Yeah.
and we had the speaker who was the CEO, founder, successful entrepreneur, David Utrilla, of U.S. Translation, and he was telling me that his business was growing, and so if translation and interpretation is not happening or is not important, it is inconsistent to how his business has grown. But it has changed, right? Artificial intelligence had a role to play there, but some of the translation was happening from language, let's just say Italian to English, and then English to English. Uh, the cultural context is still
Yeah.
very important. Great. Well, Antonella, I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's late there. I want to thank our students who have participated, in this lecture. Thank you for your excellent questions, and we'll talk more in class about some of the points that Professor Zuccella shared with us. I want to thank the Institute for International Business for setting this up. My colleagues Kayla Calabani and Professor Liu for joining us, and Brenda, thanks so much for joining, and special thanks to you, Antonella, again for sharing your expertise with us and helping us gain a better understanding of international entrepreneurship and the organizations that play in this arena. I look forward to your visit in Denver next year. I hope we can work this out, and we're also looking forward to seeing your work on these topics that we have just discussed. Thank you so much, and to everyone.
Thank you for inviting me. It has been an honor. Thanks for everybody for the patience to listen to me.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you, Antonella.
Appreciate you.
Bye bye. Bye. Ciao,
Thank
Kayla.
you.